Okay, hey, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while. I had to work on a music video for somebody and, had to take care of some stuff, things pop up here and there, but here we are with another video. This video is just gonna be just me fooling around with, joints, basic joints, and messing around with the human IK and, going over like some basic stuff you should know when it comes to, rigging a character. Um, yeah, I will continue the car tutorial, although, at that point, you should be familiar, for those of you that are following, you should be familiar with most of the tools and controls for Maya. So if you want to continue and go ahead and go past what I've done so far, feel free, with your own models and start making things. So with this, just a basic model, just put like eye texture on it, you know, just so it didn't look blank or or weird. Yeah, I didn't really skin it. It's kind of partially stylized body model, so don't mind it too much. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm gonna switch this to rigging, which you can also do with your F keys on your keyboard. So let's start creating joints. So uh, yeah, we could start with right here. This is the root joint. I've held the X key down so that I can snap it to the grid. I'll kind of move that one up. So I'm just gonna move it up a little bit. Oh yes, another thing to do. That's it. Okay, if it's not on a layer, I'm gonna add the body to a layer. Let me make sure. Thought it was on a layer. So I'm gonna delete unused layers. Okay, so with that, yeah. Alright, now I can just click on the joint. So yeah, I moved it up. Root joint. Um, you wanna kind of follow the anatomy of what you're working on. If you're working on something realistic, like a human or a dog or a cat or even a horse, you wanna have reference for their bone structures and systems. And basically, when creating joints, you want to create your joints so that they match. So like this right here is the a joint, and this is another joint, and then this in between is basically you could say the bone, and it's like the joints are usually the areas of rotation. So with that in mind, I create one joint here, but I'm gonna move it forward a bit. Might even move it down because that's basically an area of rotation where like the leg is going to rotate. And then going back to the joint tool, I click on the last joint that I created, and then I can click on where the next joint is going to be. So, or where I want the next rotation to possibly happen. So that's going to be in the knee area right here. And then the ankle. And so I'm going to move the ankle over a bit. I do want it to match inside the character. Okay. Oh. And then from there, you have the ball of the toe. I mean, ball of the foot, and then the toe. So, so I'm just gonna actually just grab this one over a little. Okay, so cool thing with when it comes to rigging a character or objects that you want to like animate and move is that you can move things around and work on half. So you notice I'm working on one half and then I can mirror it over to the other side. So here I go. I'm gonna move this down. And what I'm gonna do, going back to my joint tool, I'm gonna hold X, create another joint here, and create another joint. Also, the direction of where it's pointing you, if you notice that it forms kind of like a triangle, that means it's going from parent to child, in a way. So that means if I move this, it's gonna move everything underneath it. Like the parent will bring all its children with it when it moves. So it's like if you think about it, like you can't lift your foot up in the air and keep your leg still. You have to move your entire leg. So this part can move, but then at the same time, if you wanted to bring your foot back down, you can't bring your foot back down, but you can bring your knee down. So it's like you want to think about like how an actual body moves when you're creating joints or the body of the character you're creating, because maybe you're creating like a creature and you want your creature to have certain movements. Maybe it has like 8 arms, or like you know uh, or it's a snake that slithers, and you have like multiple joint system going on there. So you want to keep that in mind, like keep that in consideration when you're creating it. So okay, I created this joint here. I'm just gonna move it here. I'm gonna do Control D and duplicate it. So I can select it, select the other one, press P to pretty much just parent it, so that way it's all connected. So that way if I grab this one, it'll move the others. Control D one more time. But see, if you do it while it's connected, it ends up creating a second joint attached to the one that's already there. So you don't want to do that unless it's a single joint. So I'm gonna create a joint here. and just parent it to that one. So basically, this is like the spine of the character, and then you have your clavicle to your shoulder. And then you can have like your shoulder to your elbow. Now here it's a little iffy. Some people have like forearm, an extra joint in there for a forearm twist. Some people don't. It's pretty much how you want to create it. And then you have the actual wrist. So it's good to look at your model from all angles so that some of these joints are properly positioned. Because one thing you want to make sure is that, even though it looks good in one angle, it may not actually be good in another angle. So yeah, child, parent. So this right here is kind of like a root axis joint, which will just be the center of gravity for the entire thing. So if I wanted to move it, the whole thing at once, I can move it from that point. Everything's connected. So from here, hold an X, I put a joint there, move it down. So this will be base of the neck, I guess. Control D, duplicate it. So base of the neck, the actual end of the neck or base of the head, center of the head, and could put one at the very top, like extra things like hats and hair, maybe. So, so this one, I'm gonna move this a little back here, kind of bring it up right here. This one a little forward. So, this one, I'll probably position it around the ear. And then I'm gonna create one right there. But this one, of course, it's going to do it. Let me delete that. I'm gonna create it right here. So then in the center of the eye. So this is basically controlling the eye. So then I can child parent, child parent. So let me go down here and work on this file bit. So if I hold the D key down, I can move it without moving everything else along with it. It looks like I have an extra joint in here. I can go ahead and delete. And I'm holding the D key down. So yeah, just to basically position the spine, give it a little curve. So we're gonna do some basic joint here. So it's like here, you can pretty much create 1, 2, 3. And with that, you can start positioning it inside your model and rotate parts. So one rotation here. One rotation there. So you have 1, 2, 3 rotations. And then you kind of want to cap it off at the fingertips. So let me do that. In another view, just create this extra piece. Especially it helps with the coverage of what you're trying to, the area that you're trying to cover by creating this extra piece. I mean, you'll see when I skin it what I'm talking about. So now we have that. So now let's create one finger, and you can pretty much start. You pretty much have them all. So you see this one's like right near the knuckle. So from there it's 1. And you can even bend your own hand to see. 2. So knuckle. So you see it bends in like. So if you actually bend your actual finger, you notice it bends in 3 places. 1, 2, 3. And then you just, like I said, cap off the tip. So I'm just, moving everything into place. And with that, then you can Control D, duplicate it, and move it over for each finger. That way you're not creating the same set, especially if it's, almost exactly the same. So you might have to do some minor tweaks, of course. For some fingers are longer than others, so you adjust accordingly. And another thing too, if you ever feel that visually your joints feels too big, you can go up to the display options at the top of the screen, and under animation, there's a joint size. You can change your joint size. See, I think by default it's at like 1, which is like really huge. I usually turn it down to like 15, but you can always turn it down to whatever matches your needs. So it's just a display size. It doesn't actually change the size of the joint. It's just how you visually perceive it. If it doesn't look a certain way to you, or, uh, so basically created half a body. Now, before I even start mirroring over, I mean, you can do individual toes. I'm not gonna go through the whole process. I mean, this character doesn't even have toes, but you can also just have toes, especially if your character isn't really moving their individual toes a lot. You don't want to go and start creating a whole bunch of unnecessary joints. You want to just keep it as simple as possible. So now, the cool thing is, um, in Maya they have like a whole system here where you can label your joints. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how that works. So here, let me show all labels. So right now, none of these joints are labeled. So when I click on it, the only thing is it has its name, which is joint 3, joint 4, joint 2, joint 9. They all have random names. What's cool is you can go into the joint label, and so I'm gonna click on this, like the little top part of it. joint, if you click on it, it will pop it out, the menu, the little dot lines. This is Maya 2017. You can also do that in the other versions of Maya as well. So under the labels, you got the individual toes and fingers, but then you also have like whole area. So I could label this leg. And if this is, and starting at the top part, like the hip area, you'll notice it goes down and pretty much labels the whole thing. So it kind of tries to recognize what the entire leg is. So you have your hip, your knee, your foot, and then, you know, you have your toe and um, another toe bone. Sorry about that alarm. So yeah, so then I can do the same thing for the arm. So I'll start from the shoulder. So you see it says shoulder, elbow, hand, finger, 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 finger. So this one, you can go in here and relabel it if you need to. So I can relabel that hand. Um, let's see, joint labeling. So here, I can label that collar. And I can start from here and just label like the spine. And using your up and down arrows, I can go to the next joint. Press the G key to label it spine, spine. And then I could start labeling this on part of the neck. So that'd be neck 1, neck 2. So head, and then leave the eye as it's, because this is just pretty much basic labels. So you can go in depth a little with the fingers though. So like thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky, and then of course you have extra fingers. So the cool thing is this is the entire hand. You can keep that label as hand and use this it's like finger base. So then that would just be like where the fingers all connect to a single area. This one, since it controls everything and it's not really thing, you could label this the root, and then you pretty much have your joints set up. So it's like I could just label this the left side. Start from here, left side. So the only thing that didn't get labeled is the eye, and this is just for simple purposes. So now with this selected, you can go in. Sorry, go in and under the skeletons that you can mirror joints. So we can bring up those options and show you mirror it. And before we even mirror it, what I could do is, since all these stuff are labeled, left toe, left knee, and everything, I can go ahead and with the joint I can rename the joints from the labels. So now when I click on the joint, you see how it says joint 1 here, but when I click on this joint, it says left collar, left shoulder, left elbow, because the joints have been renamed, so I don't have to go through and rename it. That way you can easily find some. If you wanted to find like a control for the elbow, you can go in and, you know, even if I don't look there, I can go under Windows Outliner, go into my joint menus, uh, yeah, pretty much like expand. So this one would probably be the leg set, and then up here, yeah, it's the body. So now you can see I can expand it, and if I'm looking for something specific, I go, well, here's the left elbow. You know, left elbow's there, as well as uh, under the your hypergraph hierarchy, which it's a hierarchy of everything in your scene. See, left elbow's there. Everything makes it easier to find if you're looking for something specific that you want to work on. Like, you know, so if you feel you need to work on this, then you can go ahead and do that. So then it's like what you can do if everything is properly labeled, you can go in and go back to the joint labeling and rename all the joints. That you have. So left shoulder, left elbow. So now I'll go up here and click on this and rename this one left eye. I'll put underscore left eye. I'll put the 0 1. Usually you want to add like numbers like that if it's going to be more than one character in the scene. So 0 1, 0 2, you know, and so on and so forth. Either that or put like the character name in there. Okay, so with that, so we have the whole left side and everything. So now I can go in and hide all labels. So we don't really need the labels to see it anymore. That was just visual guide. So let's see with this collar. I can go over to the mirror joints. So like just doing it by default, it mirrored it, but it mirrored it from front to back, and I want it to mirror it from one side to the other side. So I'm gonna undo that and bring up the options. So here, you know, you want to mirror it not just across the X axis, but you also want to mirror it behind across the other axis. So it's like, so we'll just try each one to show you the difference. Also, when you're mirroring, you want to search for any word that says left, since we're going to make the right side, and replace it with the word right. So it says search for anything that's left when you're mirroring it over, so that way you don't have to go through the whole process of renaming everything on the right side, because you already named it. Because you've already named it left, this just helps it to do it automatically. So as you can see, didn't quite get where we wanted, but it's still, as you can see, is right collar. So okay, we're gonna undo that, bring back up the options. So okay, we've already done the default, which is X and Y. Then we did X and Z, so now we do Y, Z. So here we go. It's mirrored over correctly onto the other side, and it's inside the mesh, and everything's matching up. So we have this collar and this collar. So then you can do the same for the leg. There's a difference between how it behaves and its orientation when you mirror things over. So with the legs, I might mirror it over and have it follow its orientation, so that way everything matches up as far as being able to move certain things. And still kept the name, so I didn't change that, so it's going from left to right, left to right. You could do the same thing for the eye. Left eye, right eye. So when you have your joints pretty much set up, what you can do is grab like whenever there's joints there, even though you have like a mesh, every time you try to click on the mesh, if you're not clicking on like just an area where there isn't any joints underneath, you're almost always gonna end up clicking on the joints. The joints will take priority every time you try to click. So it's like you want to make sure you're clicking on the mesh itself, or using your outliner and everything to properly select what it is that you want to select. So it's like select the mesh and the joints. That way we can combine them. So you have a skin option up here on the rig where you can bind skin, and there's different methods. So there's bind skin, and then there's interactive bind skin. So let's just try it. So under bind skin, you have options here. So you can have joint hierarchy. Each one has its own options. So maybe you didn't select all the joints. Maybe there's just specific joints you want to bind it to. And then there's different types of binding methods and skinning modes methods, as well as your weight system and the distance on how it weights, and also the number of influences. So it's like, do I want like 5 joints affecting this arm? So when I move this arm or move any of those 5 joints, part of this arm will move. You want to worry about your influences, your drop off plates, and everything. So by default, you can just go ahead, click on the root, which selects everything, and then click on your mesh, and you can just bind skin, and then you'll have your character bound. And then I can so I'll just click on a joint here. So I have this left elbow, so if I move this elbow, you see it's moving just fine. It's not, the weighting is not perfect. Obviously the bending isn't real, but yeah, at least it's moving. So see, the character is attached, or the mesh of the character is attached to the joints. Now, this may look like it's okay and everything, but as you can see, let's try moving a joint up here. As you can see, there's like areas, because it's multiple influences, it starts to deform areas that I don't want it to. So I have to go in and probably paint weights. Paint weights will help you fix certain areas. So that way, so let's go in and show you. So I move this, but I don't want, when every time I move the shoulder, that moving this part. So okay, I'll move the shoulder up, and what you can do is select the skin, go up to the skin options, and paint weights. Now here you want to make sure your tool settings are turned on. So right now it popped out the menu for me, but normally I have it docked here on the side, so I'm just gonna dock that. There it is. So I'm looking for, so there's two ways. There's replace, smooth, add, scale. You have the different values that you paint. So I'm looking for the shoulder joint. So good thing everything is labeled. So now I can find it. Okay, there's left shoulder. So left shoulder is pulling this. So the white areas, are basically the strongest. The gray areas are the weakest areas of its influence of where it's pulling, and of course, black areas are where it has zero, where it's not affecting that at all. So I don't want this shoulder every time she lifts her arm to affect this area. So I can go in and replace its value with zero, and as you can see, it starts to fix itself out. You can also change your opacity, so it's kind of smooth transition, and holding the B key down using the left click and dragging, I can change the size of the brush that I'm using to paint the weights for the model. So I'm eventually trying to paint this value to zero so it doesn't pull, but of course there is some pulling on the actual human skin. So what I can do is go to smooth and start smoothing some of these areas down. So smooth will kind of find a middle ground between, and it's like, does exactly what it is, helps smooth out the area so that way it's not like a huge or major influence. So that's why I don't paint this area completely black, because I do want it to have some realism of the skin, moving and stretching a little, but not too much. So you can change your opacity to 1 if you want when you're just smoothing. Now, if there's no area, like let's say I wanted this shoulder to move this side for whatever reason, that's what the add is for. So you can add influence to it. So every time she moves the shoulder, this part of her chest will pull that way. I mean, you can always undo, but I mean, you know, that's basically what that add influence is. And at any point in time, if you feel it's not working, you can unbind the skin and it will go back to it will take it out of the skeleton or your joint system. So that way, this is just a mesh by itself. It's not being influenced by this. So every time I raise this arm, it's not doing anything to the mesh. It's not gonna move her arm. So now I can just go back. And this is just basic setup. I mean, there's a lot more stuff as far as, freezing your transformations, normalizing your weight orientation, stuff that you can do, but this is just basics to get like somebody started with the simple animation. So with this, I'm just gonna put that back to 0 rotation. Also, you want to make sure that you're not using like, the tip areas when binding it to the character. I mean, there's different things you want to try out, but this is like I said, this is just a basic idea of how the whole skinning and skeleton system works. So here's another method that I like to uh, use a lot the interactive skin bind tool. So you'll see like this capsule here. What's cool about this is if you work on one side of the body, in most cases it will update for the other side. So I'm just gonna make sure I go to the interactive skin bind tool. So it's better to just go into the tool rather than try to just do it directly. Because, yeah, when you do it in the tool, then it updates. You see, even though you don't see it, you can still see the capsule. These capsules are basically controlling the area influence. So instead of me painting like how I did before, you can basically use this, and it's like the color areas are the areas that are being influenced, and then you have your regular model. So if I go in and I rotate this, you see the arm is being distorted, as well as it's still pulling from where I didn't really want it to pull. So then I go in, go up to skin, go down to the interactive skin bind tool, and I can click on joints to see, okay, so this collarbone was pulling into the shoulder a bit much. So it's like I can move that out, and you see that fixes that area, but then I still need to fix this area right here. So there's parts of it, this tool, so I can scale and move out or move in. I mean, you can still paint weights on top of this, but at least this method gives you somewhat of a control on setting it up so that there's less work for you when you're painting the weights. And you can also move and rotate the capsule. And like I said, as you can see, it shows you another capsule on this side because it's going to update any changes you make to one side to the other. So it kind of saves time on actually working on your mesh and getting it to look proper. So once you have the tool active, you can start editing parts of it. So yeah, you have a lot of areas that you can control. spread influence too. Which is why I like the capsule based system, because then when you go in, I mean, don't get me wrong, um, you can go in and mirror weights. That is a thing. There is a copy vertex weight. Yeah, here it is. Mirror weights over here. You can mirror the weights that you paint, and like before, you can still go in and um, paint weights while having the interactive capsule system. So I can just go in and fix problematic areas if it's not bending. So this is like just basic setup. So you see one side doesn't really match up with the other. It's because I didn't paint the weights on this side. So you go in, mirror the weights. Notice I keep the same mirroring that I had in apply. And there it is. Same mirroring as I did with the joints. Mirror it from one side to the other. It starts to mirror out. And of course, you can animate the stuff. So then it's like I can rotate this, key it, and start animating from there. Like just basic animations to get you started. You know, I'll probably do another lesson later on going over complex stuff, but yeah, this is just basic rigging. Show you the different possibilities of doing things in Maya so that you can start animating your characters. And you can also turn off the x-ray joints if you don't want to see your joints. And yeah, so there's other things you can do, especially with your joints if they're properly set up and you're doing like a human character. You can go in and use the human IK. So it's like they'll just ask you to define certain areas. I forgot you're supposed to assign the bone. Yeah. So I've assigned. So you see it says right hip, left hip, left leg. So yeah, took me a minute. It's been a long time since I've done this, but yeah, under human IK, I can start assigning it, and it mirrors it over. So I'm just gonna go in and start assigning. know it's wondering why isn't certain parts even and stuff. So you always want to make sure you put everything back to its default position. So when you do it all correctly, you should be able to get it to create a control rig. So once you click on this option and go to control rig, then it will automatically create well, it'll automatically technically rig your character for you. So now I can just move this around and have this character move with this human IK system. So then you can actually grab the controls from here, even if they're not displayed here. You can still grab the controls here. So I can, you know, move the character around. I can grab the hips, make the character bend, sit, jump, you know. So you'll have a number of controls here. So one thing with this rig is like I can move here and then I can put it back to its stance. So just leave it at its stance and go back to the control rig at any point in time. So you can use this to help you do like some basic animations with your character. So once your character is defined, then you can, you know, start moving them around. You'll have basic movements. It'll set up a lot of joints and IK movements, and you always have your root that you can pretty much move your character around. So it's like, you know, your controls. So that way, you know, your joints can stay hidden. You don't have to worry about clicking on the joints itself. I mean, the more you learn about it, more complex rigs you can set up to do a number of movements to your characters. But yeah, the human IK is one simple way, especially with this human IK rig setup that they have when you define your um body parts. You can take in like motion capture data and apply it to it, and it will read it automatically, and the character will start moving based on whatever data you apply to it, because it knows what the elbow is, what the shoulder is, leg, you know. So it makes it very easy once you have this set up. So if you have like specific movements that you're trying to go for, and you have some capture data that you want to apply to the character, you know, this is like a quick way of doing it. You know, it doesn't take that long to set up, and you can have fun with it. So these are just like some basic things. You know, I could go in more depth with it. Like I've done a lot. I've also tutored some people in animation and stuff. So it's, although I specialize in modeling, I do know like a lot of aspects of Maya. So I'm just hoping that this helps like some beginners out there, you know, get started trying some stuff out. So thank you and look forward to the next video. Be sure to subscribe.